We are at Charleville Cemetery. Now, we do like to walk around old cemeteries, but today we've got a tour. Never had an actual tour of a cemetery before.
I don't think so, no. This is a flood height marker and how it's impacted the cemetery.
We're being watched.
Like there's a pump shed with a citrus, like a lime orchard. That's where the Chinatown was. And they had their market gardens there. Most of them were bachelors. There was about 20 Entrepreneur arrived in Charleville way back when he was only a young fella, hopped off the boat with only a few shillings in his pocket, made his way to Charleville eventually, started looking after a cafe not far from where the Hotel Charleville is, the one on the corner, the old one there. And the people from the brewery used to come up, and they noticed Harry did such a good job looking after the cafe. They encouraged him to get his liquor license or his hotelier's license. The Greek mail order brides.
Oh.
Yeah. So she was over in Greece. Her grandmother got and said to and the neighbour, they're both they looked. He said, Pagoni, you should marry my son, Nick. Particularly, he's over in Australia. And, after the war, 1950s Greece, there was a sort of shortage of eligible men because of the war. So, yep, she took it up. Even though she didn't want to leave home, she made her way to Australia on a Qantas Constellation and came up to Brisbane and then, out to Charleville. And she only met the guy a couple of days before the wedding. Married him. He had a little cafe right next to Heineman's Bakery, Mario's it was called, and she helped him there. Mario's was operating during the war. They used to serve the Australian diggers for free, but charged the Yanks double, they reckon, because they had plenty of money. But anyway, she was a seamstress. She did tailoring back in Greece, but when she came to Australia, she wanted to have her own little business. Greeks very enterprising people. And a lot of Greek people came out because of Harry's Hotel, There was a whole cafe scene out here. It was really quite wonderful. And anyway, she got herself a Singer sewing machine and she started making dresses, ballroom dresses, wedding dresses, bridesmaids dresses, and for the ladies. And, there was never a ball to be had without a few of Mrs. Chicks, as she was affectionately known. Beautiful dresses. And she would never use a tape measure. She'd just look at people and just do it. She just knew what size everything was and no patterns. She just did it, just very good at what she did. Wool was a huge part of Charleville's early story until the bottom fell out of the wool market in the 80s. And the town was a lot bigger in those wool times. You can see the streets are large and there's it's quite a large town, but there was sort of like 6,000 people here in its height, 5,000 to 6,000 people, because the wool industry needs a lot more workers. So now our population is about 3,200. But this, he was a gun shearer, and all the shearers and a lot of the bush workers were all Labor people, and until quite recently, until the 70s really, it was staunch Labor because looking back, because they got them good working conditions. They were prone to burning down, and one particular night in 1897, I think it was anyway, a whole bunch of houses burnt down in Alfred Street. So George, he had the local mechanicking business, and he decided, we need a fire truck. So he took an old 1912 Dennis truck and converted it into a fire truck. Just for the sake of Charleville. And down at the old historic house, there's, I think, the second fire truck that he also had a hand in building. Rosalie Caroline Ogden Parry. So they lived on a property out of town, and she died from a snake bite. She was reaching into her basket of wool, she was doing some knitting, and there was a brown snake in there and a bitter, and she couldn't get. Anyway, she died. But her son, William Ogden Parry, eventually became the police magistrate for Charleville back in I think in the 1870s to 1880s, in there for quite a period of time. And he was a fairly arrogant sort of a chap, this fellow, and resented by many, apparently. And there's actually a street named after him, Parry Street. They just shortened it, Ogden Parry. That's Parry, after him. So in the absence of any other, governmental and, ecclesiastical authorities in town, the police magistrate was sort of like the governor, and he was the authority. And a lot of people, they didn't like this guy. And just to give you an indication of what he was like, apparently there was this, in 1875, there was a cricket match on Alfred Street. That's the main street out in front of the bakery there. Which of course was, people, mistakenly thought was for traffic, like Alfred Street. But they had this great cricket match there, and one of the guys, he hit a beautiful six, and it went into the blacksmith shop, and it hit this dray, this vehicle in there, horse-drawn vehicle. And anyway, the guy, Hirsch, he was so angry at the cricket ball that he chopped it in half. And the flannelled men of note came in, and including William, Ogden Parry, and this would not do. So he hunted around, because he was a magistrate. He couldn't do it himself, but he hunted around until he found another magistrate, and he got him charged for malicious damage of a cricket ball, and fined 12 and 6 or 1 month's jail. And I think he apparently took the 1 month jail, because these guys were, these were the authorities in the town, all the top people. And anyway, that's the sort of thing that he did. But he was actually a very important person in the police force in Queensland. Went on down to Brisbane and sort of ran, the headquarters, and got very high up and did a lot of good things. For a huge part of the history of these western towns, the railway came through in 1880, and then it headed down to Cunnamulla. He was on the Cunnamulla section, and on one of the little sort of sidings on the way to Cunnamulla. And
struck by lightning.
These guys were out there, night, all sorts of weather, and he was working on the line, and he got struck by lightning, and he got killed. Just out of the blue. It got him, and he had a wife and 3 kids. So his mates on the railways, they pitched together, and they got him a headstone just to remember their mate. The grave of the only military casualty during World War II, Anthony Kingsmead Brooke. He was an Englishman. He was serving in the Air Force. He was a pilot, Royal Air Force. He took off on his Boomerang, Australian, aircraft, and it was about 300 metres out from the airstrip, and he was flying over the Polo Club, and something jammed on. They had a fault on him. Anyway, it jammed. It went into spiral and just hit the ground and burst into flames. And this guy lost his life. So there's a fountain at the RSL. When you go into RSL, right over on the right-hand side, in honour of this guy. He was buried with full military honours. Because World War II was a big deal. The World War II base here in Charleville had thousands of soldiers and military things going on in our secret World War II base. The centennial of Charleville's discovery, Kennedy came through, and there's a tree marked 1847, and anyway, so that was 108. So they. No, it was 47. So anyway, there was a big centenary celebration, and he drove the coach, memorial. Him and his son also was on that coach too, whose name was also Edward Donahue, Ted Donahue. The coach was a big deal for Charleville. Was quite a centre. They used to go up to Blackhall and up north, and then out to Ada Vale, to the north west, and then down south to Cunnamulla.